in a different way, you know. And I don't watch WWF really, to be honest. WWE, sorry. I don't watch WWE much anymore, and that's not because it's not, you know, good and people think, like you said, it's not that I think I'm above it or anything like that. It's just that it's not something that,
Like teaching.
yeah, and it's just not. I just don't get as much enjoyment out of it as I used to. And you do watch wrestling in a completely different way now. It's hard to sit back. It's very hard to sit back and just be a fan now and just watch wrestling,
Like
because
lose yourself in the moment.
yeah, because you're always looking at it from a wrestler's perspective. In that, I could do that, or I could do this, or I see how he did that, and I see how he did that, and so from that perspective, I try to watch wrestling that is a style that I gravitate towards more, and I feel like I could get more out of for me or my character that I enjoy, which is more. I love New Japan. I love watching New Japan Pro Wrestling, and if it was, if I have any free time, that's probably what I'm gonna sit down and watch.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'll watch Ring of Honor, but I tend to actually, if I'm being honest with you, I tend to stick to wrestling from sort of like 2000, like 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, Ring of Honor, sort of like, older independent wrestling
Yeah.
that I grew up watching, and I tend to always gravitate back towards that, if I'm honest. Or sometimes I'll watch some Attitude Era stuff, or some classic Ric Flair stuff. But yeah, I don't watch that much current wrestling unless.
Yeah, it's I get what you mean. It is hard. I mean, even for me, like there's very few promotions. I would say actually Ring of Honor, still when I've gone to a live show, they do such a good job at sucking you into what they're doing. But it's only because they have very clear fundamentals of that they really perform for the live crowd as opposed to the TV. And that's probably the big difference. Like if I go to a WWE show now, I mean, I've stopped going because it just drives me mad. Not just because of WWE, but because like everybody around me it's like some sort of analyst, and there's like some sort of journalist like with me, and they're going to tell me everything that should have happened, why he wasn't booked, and it's a nightmare. Like no one ever seems that
no, it's true
to sit and watch, unless they're a kid. They're like loving it, obviously, but like for the most part, like fans buy those tickets, but then they'll give you a running commentary for it, and I'm like, I don't remember it being like this. Like I'm sure it's not just an age thing. I just think it's how WWE's moved on, and that whole TV side of it. Like if you go and
I think it's a social media thing, man. I think it's the fact that
I mean, I went to I think it was Raw like just last year, and man, I think it was at the O2, and it was like the commercials coming on, so they just black everything out, and then like a wrestler, like there was a match going on. I think it was like Dolph Ziggler and somebody else, and and talk about like I don't know if I was a kid, I'd have been like, what the hell? But obviously I'm an adult, so I get what's going on. But basically the match had finished, and clearly Dolph Ziggler didn't get backstage quick enough. So he's like selling this injury after a match, and all of a sudden there's some referee come down going, hurry up and get out of the shot.
Yeah.
And then he's done like 100-meter sprint to get off the thing, and I'm like, oh, that's just taking me out of it.
Taking you out the moment of it.
You know what I mean? They're not even trying to like pretend now. It's just like it's gone from art to this, and I think so much of that. I always tell people, because they always ask what are the best shows to go to. I always recommend house shows now for WWE as opposed to Raw or SmackDown, because it is so much for TV. It's so television based, and the matches as well are very much TV wrestling matches, as I call them. There's a completely different worked match to what a live match would get. In that, I've got to ask, did you end up watching WrestleMania at all, or seeing any bits of it from this year?
I watched bits and pieces. I'll tell you what. Like I said, I don't watch much WWE anymore, but I was really curious to see.
Yeah, as we all were.
Really curious to see what it was going to be like. So I watched most of the first night, and I watched a couple of matches from the second night, and I hadn't seen any of the empty arena stuff until then. Like I know some people probably leading up to it, I'd seen some Raws or SmackDowns or NXTs
Yeah,
about the
oh,
fans.
it's depressing. I
But
tell
I
you.
hadn't seen any of that, so for me that was my first experience, and I got to say it was like, I'm not saying they didn't do an amazing job, because bloody hell they did, and I actually think the ladder match was a very good match. I think the Daniel Bryan match was a very good match, but just watching it without fans, it just wasn't right, you know, and it just it. I know we all know this anyway, but my God, did it reinforce how important to a match and a show the fans are, you know, how important that atmosphere is to a match, and how much you enjoy it as a fan. And
Yeah,
it,
definitely.
it just was it's a bit odd for me, and I just couldn't get into it, if I'm honest. It just wasn't for me. But
Uh,
but I tell you
yeah.
what, that the AJ Styles Taker kind of segment at the end was incredible. I thought that was
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
One of the best things I've seen in years, and
Mhm.
I was like, wow, okay, fair enough. They
Mhm.
they knew they had to be a bit different and a bit more creative, and bloody hell did they smash it out of the park.
Mhm.
That was incredible. But yeah. So, but the actual general stuff in the arena, it was just in the performance center. I
It
just
was
could not get
flat for
into it.
me.
Yeah. How did you think? What
Yeah.
did you think of it?
Well, I made a huge mistake because basically, obviously, we was all in isolation, so like all my listeners were like, "Please bring us some WrestleMania stuff." So we decided to do these like watch-alongs, like every day leading up to WrestleMania. So I must have done like 7 of them, all from these gigantic stadiums, you know, WrestleMania 8, and
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
So
got all these watch-alongs, like
you
fantastic.
set yourself up for failure there, didn't you?
Yeah, you go from that, you go from the introduction to Stephanie McMahon, you think, oh, this is different. They obviously, I mean, they ripped into themselves with their whole little promo at the beginning. They kind of mocked themselves with the whole pirate thing, which I thought was okay. And then they done that like that segment with the national anthem all combined. I thought, oh, that's really clever. And then we got to like Gronk, and I was just like, oh, this guy's annoying me already. And it's just so flat. He's there, like, and him and what's his name? I forget his name. Who's the guy? Who's his partner with him? Mojo Riley.
Okay. Yeah.
Like they're acting like a couple of 16-year-old kids that have just had a drink for the first time. Like it's really cool. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's because I'm British. I don't know who he is, so maybe that's like he's really in America. Maybe it's just me because I don't really follow American football. But then once the match come, I was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be tough. And I couldn't believe for me how many matches they booked.
Yeah.
Like at one time they only had 8, and I thought, you know what, they'll probably just stick with that now, because why would you want to keep risking everybody coming down? So I was like, maybe they'll just stick with 8, and over 2 nights, 4 a night, that's bearable. And 2 of them are going to be like, you know, very cinematic. So, you know, you kind of got 6. But they didn't want that. They went for the whole shebang as usual. And I think like that ladder match, I felt so sorry, because that's one of those matches you need the crowd reactions for,
Yeah.
to get it. And I think like leading into it, like I had who was it? I think it was Mariah May, and she like we were talking about, oh, maybe they'll come up with some sort of green screen around the whole ring, and they'll
I
like
did wonder whether
input
they
some
might.
old footage of crowd.
Well,
Yeah, it really took me out of it.
I wondered why they wouldn't do. And look, maybe there's a really good reason for this, and maybe it'd be totally stupid. But I always thought, if they shot it in a way that you don't necessarily see that there's no crowd, like with tighter shots,
Mm-hmm.
or you know,
Yeah,
and they had the hard cam facing the entrance anyway. They
yeah,
could kind of pump some crowd noise in, maybe, and kind of give that effect that there was a crowd there. I don't know. Maybe that's just a stupid thing to say.
yeah. Like
But I just
for some reason, like I kept saying this on the build up, because I was like, they're gonna make it look really different. And I thought, well, if you've got no crowd there, they can have the camera guys literally standing on like where the turnbuckle is, because they're not going to get in anybody's way. And that's how, like, if you remember, like NXT when it first come on the scene, that's how they used to shoot it.
yeah.
And maybe and to be honest with you, I know they tried to light it up and look spectacular with the LED lighting, but really and truly, like there was a fan going on the ceiling, which was just like really taking me out of the whole thing. And I just kept looking at this fan going around at the top, and then I was like, why didn't they? I think what they would have been better to do is like the old ECW mentality, is just stick to what you have got and just have the entranceway was fine, but I think when it comes to the actual bell to bell, is just to black out as much as possible and make it just look really cinematic if possible.
Yeah.
But it was unfortunate, but I'm kind of still, if I'm honest, and I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but I kind of think they should have still had an event. If they want to have an event, that's great, because it's great for wrestling fans at the time. You know, they want something. But I would have renamed it like a super show, or do something for charity for the night or whatever, and take like maybe 80% of what was going to be booked, maybe minus the Drew match because he won the Royal Rumble, and Rhea Ripley won because, you know, there's the Royal Rumble aspect of it, and wait further down. But I just think to have that as WrestleMania was just like, well, you know, as a brand name, it just seemed really odd. But like you, I did thoroughly enjoy the Boneyard match, which is not my cup of tea normally.
Yes.
I mean, the House of Horrors match that they used to do, that I couldn't stand it. I don't know if you remember that one, but like
I totally
you saw it. But
yeah, the one they
my
did with
God,
Randy Orton and
Randy
Bray Wyatt.
Orton stepping out of a limo in wrestling gear.
Yeah, those types of things aren't.
Which already I found, why would he do that?
Yeah, I've never really been a big fan of that type of stuff, but my God, did they do it well? Oh my God, it was just brilliant. It was. I actually watched it again a couple of days later.
Yeah, I think what they've done well to do is not have commentators over the top of it, for one, because they used to do that in the House of Horrors, and that's just stupid. And like, you got to go one way or the other. You can't make it seem like a real fight and have it all cinematic. Like, you just can't do it. So you've either got to go all eggs in one basket with one thing, or don't do it at all. But the fact that they used the music well, and they told a story. And also, I think, like, I keep saying this, I know people harp on about the dream match of having Sting and Undertaker. I never want to see that in like a Saudi show or something like that. I'd much rather it be in something like this, where they don't have to like go out and break their backs, and, you know, they've got time to make it look really good and authentic. They can just use their characters. But it's not something, I know a lot of people are harping on now about this is the way wrestling's going to be going forward. I'm like,
no, I don't think that's
I'm in trouble.
It's not going to be. That's not the way it's going to be at all. I mean, I think they did the absolute best they could with the circumstances they had, and my God, they went above and beyond anyone's expectations with that. And it was, you know, it was basically an incredible fight scene from a film, and it, you know, but there's no way that that's what wrestling's going to be going forward. If that was the case, they would just film the whole of Raw and SmackDown like that every week, wouldn't they? But it's
well, I mean, let's face it. If there was an audience there and they put that match on during WrestleMania, the whole 80,000 would have probably booed it.
Yes, they'd be watching
it. I've paid my money to watch.
They'd be watching it on the screen. Yeah.
So that wouldn't work. I mean, you can have it now and then. I do think there's a market for it, because it's the first time. But I think there's a lot of things that have made it effective. I do think it was brilliantly done, but I also think it was a welcome change to what we were seeing in that empty arena. I just think, like,
I mean,
we were grabbing, because the Fire Funhouse match, again, that was another match I was like, I'm not sure about this. But I mean, I wouldn't call it a match. It was like a live promo, if anything. And
it was a bit.
I enjoyed the storytelling aspect of it, and I thought, for a change, being a long-term WWE fan, I'm actually getting a bit of a payoff for actually being like loyal to it, because they're actually using a lot of bits, and there's a little bit of nostalgia in it, and so there was a nice payoff to it. But yeah, that was fine. But I mean, it's not a match. I'm sure. I don't know what Dave Meltzer gave it, but
yeah, it was. I mean,
scratching his head.
It wasn't a match, and it wasn't even you know, when you look at the Taker AJ thing, that was essentially like it was a fight scene, wasn't it? It was a movie fight scene. It wasn't even that. It was like a conceptual kind of. It was a bit. It was like a dream sequence, wasn't it? Almost from a film where they kind of like, they had all this nuanced stuff where they harped back to the history of John Cena and what he really is as a person, and it was clever. It was super clever, and I enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't like it as much as the AJ Taker thing, but I totally appreciate the fact that they wanted to do something different. And like you said, I think actually you hit the nail on the head. Actually, when you said it was just a